Howdy, this is Logan at the Coutts blockade. There's an undercover cop right there. We just had some people come back to the fire and reference that they are having a bit of a hard time walking around Coutts, and then they were tailed by a police officer. And they got some undercovers just kind of hanging around. So I'm gonna try and make it down to my car where I'm parked, and as you can see, the road is still blocked. Basically, they had all sorts of riot police, well, the ERT, pardon me, emergency response team, and then they had a big lineup of cops up the road like this, and they kind of had an L around the building. And you'll see some photos once I get to my car and I take a little bit of time processing on my laptop, or maybe they'll be done in the morning. Either way, as you can see, regardless of the, I'm not going to call it drama, but regardless of the heavy police presence and all the lights and having the ERT team here and etc, 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 the road is still blocked. This is coming from the USA. See, you still got, and this guy was not here the last few nights, but now that guy's there, and that's a cop. No commercial traffic coming through. Justin Trudeau is still Castro's little bastard. We're gonna stop Castro's little bastard. Here's the highway. That flag hangs nice over the highway right there. It's almost surreal.
After the events of yesterday and the news released that the RCMP made arrests and come forward with, and the arrests resulted in long arms, firearms, handguns, and protective equipment being unearthed, we as the Coutts Convoy have decided that as a peaceful protest and to maintain that narrative, we will be rolling out tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Hallowed be thy
Hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine art the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. 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 Amen.
truck.
You know what?
Who's
We're not
with
here.
So who's gonna stay? I'm
Who's
scared.
scared? Who's scared? Their tactics are we're surrounded. Yes. Yes. It's all morale, Alex. Keep up the morale. You already started.
The ones that want to leave can leave.
If you're worried about funds, the GoFundMe will pay the fine.
Alex, they can issue us a ticket for a Highways Traffic Act. That's all they can do. Bring on the ticket.
Just got confirmation. Our organizers there brought in 2 steel track excavators, and they parked them a few miles up the road on our access. And supposedly they were along the side of the road in the ditch at the time, and the RCMP didn't like that idea, so we moved the excavators a mile or so into the farmer's field on private property, and told them, and they confirmed that. And it was shortly after, in the evening last night, that they then sent a text message to the owners of the machines, or our organizer guys, that they deemed those machines inoperable. And so it was kind of like, what do you mean you deemed inoperable? So they went out there to verify and confirm that the machines were physically damaged. Solenoid lines were cut, fuel lines were cut, hydraulic lines were tampered with. They even took filters apart and sprayed spray foam into the housings, completely destroying that. Like, that's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars to repair all that. And so we don't know for sure, if it was physically RCMP doing it, but maybe it was somebody that they informed to, because how else would anybody know that, to go and destroy equipment like that? It parked out in the middle of nowhere. So anyways, I just want to get that out there to people that, we're just being peaceful here and enjoying the weekend with family events, and they're out wrecking and vandalizing our private property. So pretty bad.
So I can confirm that we disabled 3 excavators.
Yep.
To prevent the equipment from being used in the illegal activity of the blockade.
Was there an expectation there as to how they were going to be used?
I'm not sure. I've got the answer for you. I'm not sure what other question you might have with relative to that. I wasn't part of that planning or the execution of that, so I don't think I can comment any further than that.
We're a peaceful protest, but we don't expect our authorities to break the law and to vandalize and to trespass. I think somebody should be held to account.
Now, we are waiting for the outcome of these 4 men who have been locked up since they were arrested on February 14th. We are here to bring attention to the fact that they're still locked up. They haven't been given the right
fair due process.
Out on bail. So why do you think that they're being targeted in this way?
I honestly think it's political. They're making an example of this, and they're scared to touch it because of the political unrest that's happening in our province. Leadership changes. There's an election coming up. Nobody dares touch it. But at the end of the day, I feel we need to touch this. We need to address this. People need to be aware of what's happening in Alberta. These guys were targeted, I feel. And regardless of they're innocent or guilty, they should have been allowed to do due process and should have been out on bail.
How can our beautiful Canadians who are watching right now support you guys with your legal costs, the insane amount of stress that I'm sure that this has put on you guys and your families as well? What can Canadians do to get this ball rolling?
Well, I say get a hold of your MLAs, your politicians, anybody in power authority, and let them know that this can't continue to happen. Like, it's a shame in a democratic country we're living in that this is happening. There's criminals, worse criminals, pedophiles, murderers, rapists that are out on bail, and these 4 guys are all allegedly charged with no proof. They should have a fair due process.
Our beautiful Canadians watching right now, what can we tell them about these 4 men who are still locked up?
I met 3 of the 4 men in Coutts. We were not acquaintances prior to Coutts, so I met Chris, and Tony. Obviously, since Coutts and since their arrest, I've learned a lot more about them. And what I've learned is these guys are family guys. These guys are Canadians that stood up for all of us. And these men just deserve justice. I can't speak to all the things that went down at Coutts. It was not planned, it wasn't organized. But regardless of what happened, a year without bail is not justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. These men should be out on jail to be able to defend themselves. And that to me is the biggest fight here, is we have a broken justice system, and we see a political element interfering in a system that should crank stuff like this out. Why does it take 18 months to go to trial? And why have these men not been granted bail? There was no priors, no criminal records. All the details, all the information that's out on mainstream and that the RCMP have released, I can't speak to that. I'm not an investigator. I don't know what exactly happened. But wouldn't we all want to get the truth of what happened? Wouldn't we want to let these men actually have their say? Isn't that what Canada represents? Justice, freedom? So,
well, it used to.
It sure used to. And that's why we're here, and that's the fight. So essentially, bail denied is unacceptable. And that's the part that really bothers me, is why are these family men, why are these sons, why are these brothers unable to do what many others who have committed far grievous crimes? They're bail's granted right away.
What's your speculation on it?
Sorry?
What's your speculation on it?
On
why they're being held?
It's political. It's about making an example.
The police presence in town was growing daily, and there was constant tension as police tried repeatedly to incite reaction from the peaceful protesters that were standing up for the rights of all of us. I'm so proud of the true Canadian spirit that grew out of love for each other. No one bought into the games being played by the RCMP. Everyone kept the peace and stood strong against the tyranny that we had been living through. Twice I stood on the road and stopped a convoy of police cars that were speeding through town, ignoring stop signs. I feared they would end up running over the little ones who were playing in the streets or walking around our community. The night of the raid on my house was a terrifying experience. I got out of bed for about the fourth time to be sure. I had the last load of towels ready to go for morning, and the coffee set up, and I saw blue and red lights flashing everywhere, all around my house. I freaked out, to tell you the truth. My cell phone rang, and it happened to be a police officer on my cell phone. I didn't know what was going on, but I was frightened and worried for my safety. The first person I called was my daughter, and told her what was happening. I called her on my landline with the police on my cell phone. My daughter Suzanne spoke with the officer, who lied to her and told her I was not being arrested, but that they were there to search my house. I told them I'd go out to my car and sit where it was warm and they could have full run of the house. They told me they'd have to detain me. My daughter was furious and accused him of lying to me, which he had. But my daughter's a very smart woman. In fact, that's her last name. She's told me, Mom, don't hang up the phone. Just set it down on the counter. Just set it down and leave the line open. And I went out to be arrested. And as a result of my daughter's advice, I have 5.5 hours of reporting of the police bringing guns into my home, laughing that, oh, looks like being a good Samaritan's going to get her a gun charge.
So, as you know, I've started a bumper sticker campaign. We may not be able to be on mainstream media, but God damn it, we can be on every vehicle across this country. So, please support the men. And you've got valuable real estate on your vehicle. Use it. Let people ask you why those 4 men are in jail. And if they say anything to you or argue with you, you say innocent until proven guilty. End of story.